this weekend at welterweight, we have a man that had consecutive wins over Chick Magnet Punk and Sage Northcutt, taking on Team Alpha Male's own proper Mike Malott, representing Burlington, Ontario, Canada. He moved to go to school at Dalhousie. Boo! The Tigers suck. Go Reds! Go UNB! Let's go! But he went over to Dalhousie, became the head Muay Thai coach at Titans MMA. You know Titans. We know Titans. Gavin Tucker's gym. He was supposed to be on this card taking on Pat Sabatini, but that fight didn't happen. You can see how I get excited about East Coast MMA. But for Malott, really started his early beginnings as a professional mixed martial artist there. He had a fight against Hakeem Dawodu over with World Series. He has had bouts of inactivity. But realistically, if you look at it from Mike Malott, Matt, and you go over to the Team Alpha Male website, because we've seen him cornering some fighters. We saw the blurb before Dana White's Contender Series, but if you see the blurb on their website, it says for Mike Malott, he is the MMA, BJJ, and Muay Thai coach. What do you do when you see the bout sheet come across and you get that? Like, how do you handle that? The guy's a thrice coach over Team Alpha Male.
Just decline and give the UFC the contract back. This guy must be a killer.
This guy's wild! And for Mike Malott, obviously, the inactivity is a little bit of a concern. He had the loss to Hakeem Dawodu. That's his fifth to last fight. 7 years and 5 months ago. Hakeem Dawodu, like Steele over with World Series, just cutting through everybody. Just a very dependable buzzsaw. And then he takes on Danny Henry, and it did not go that well. But for Mike Malott, has that fight, fights Thomas Danier over with Bellator 6 years and 6 months ago, fights Craig Shintani 5 years and a month ago, then a long period of inactivity. Goes to Team Alpha Male, he's a coach, he's in the room. Everybody talks about Mike Malott and how good of a striker and how good of a technician he is. So for Mike, oddly enough, he fights with CFFC against Solomon Renfro, and on the commentary team, a former foe of Mickey Gall in Chick Magnet Punk. And Chick Magnet's talking about Mike Malott and how good his striking is and how good of a technician is. Mike Malott didn't look very good in that fight. No, until he did. I mean, he throws a straight shot, drops Renfro, just jumps to his back, no hooks. He's able to get the rear naked in, then he gets the hooks in, and then he's able to get the win over Renfro. But man, Mike Malott got rocked by combinations. Renfro kept crashing distance, and every time he did, made him pay. The best shot that Renfro had, he went 1, 2, 3 to the body, and then as Malott ducks to turn away, Renfro throws a left hook. It drops Malott, and then he gets back up, and Renfro continues to pour on the damage, lets off the gas a little bit. It's just one straight shot. Renfro drops down, and Malott's able to capitalize. And then over on Dana White's Contender Series this past year in 2021, he takes on Szymon Smatritsky. He's able to get the win. Szymon Smatritsky was very early on in his career, but Malott did look very, very good in that fight, dragging him down, getting the submission win. For Malott, though, again, we touched on it. Jiu-Jitsu coach, Muay Thai coach, MMA coach, over with Team Alpha Male. It is an interesting mix. It's a cosmic gumbo, if you will, that Mike Malott possesses to take on Mickey Gall.
But MMA is one of these few sports that makes zero sense whatsoever. And 9 times out of 10, the fighter is not equal to the sum of their parts. And that's sort of what I'm worried about with Mike Malott coming over to the UFC, because when we talk about what his accolades are and what his skills really are, I really focus on the stand-up more than his grappling ability. And especially in this matchup against someone like Mickey Gall, who is a phenomenal grappler, especially with his offensive submission game. It's probably not the fight you want to show off how good you are at grappling. And with Gall, it's interesting. I don't have a great read on Mickey Gall, and here's the great news. Nobody does. If anyone tells you they know exactly what Mickey Gall's going to do, they're a full-blown liar, and you should never listen to what they have to say. Because for Gall, he came into the UFC so green in his career that we didn't really know what we were going to get. He has a great personality. He called out CM Punk on the regional scene. It's a money grab. Let's see what we can do. But after that whole, event, let's call it, is over, where do you go from there? Now you're a signed fighter in the UFC. You can't go back and fight amateur once you're a professional. So for Mickey Gall, he flew too close to the sun.
The horse was before the cart.
It exactly was. And it was really unfortunate because for Gall, he has the
cart was before the horse.
He has the personality, and he does have some of the skills, or at least the foundation of what a really promising MMA fighter could be. But the issue is that he just kept on fighting guys who were either way below him or way above him in the rankings, and we never really got a good idea as to, okay, who is Mickey Gall's equal? Because we all knew Randy Brown was better than Mickey Gall. We didn't really need those two guys to fight to prove that point. But I definitely thought Gall was better than Diego Sanchez. And it's like, okay, well, that's not the case either. But he beat George Sullivan, a guy who, if you're watching this video, y'all probably have no idea who that is. He had a few fights in the UFC.
King of the Cage, great, George Sullivan.
King of the Cage, great. But it was a tough run in the UFC, if we're all being honest. And Gall went out there and completely destroyed him. So we know you're better than George Sullivan, but worse than Diego Sanchez. How wide is that pool of fighters is what we're asking ourselves. And Gall has made improvements throughout his career, but the thing about his improvements is that they've never been the type of improvements that synergize to his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He still isn't a great wrestler, which is something I worry about. He has good boxing and improving boxing, but it's still very basic, and that's something that really is going to have troubles for him, because he's not a great striker at range. So if you have good kicks, you can beat up Mickey Gall from far away, and if he does get close to his opponent, he's not the best wrestler in the world. So it's sort of like defending a pick and roll when you know the guy isn't a shooter. It's just eliminating like half the equation from your brain. You know if Mickey Gall's going to get in close, he's either going to clinch or try to box you. He's not going to go for traditional style wrestling takedowns unless your name's CM Punk and he can just do it at the start of a fight. So I just think for Gall, he was put in one of the worst situations in UFC history. I really do believe this, because if you looked at his foundation and if he didn't get that opportunity against CM Punk, he would have probably had like kind of a Bilal Muhammad career trajectory. If you look at Bilal Muhammad's career and his resume, he had a fight in Bellator, he had a fight in this scene, he had a fight over here and over there, but he was able to slowly build himself up and become a well-rounded fighter in the UFC. I just don't think Gall was given that time to sort of incubate and cook over time outside the UFC, and we've never really seen the version that we deserve at this stage.
Mickey Gall trained with Joe Schilling for the longest time, and I was expecting those improvements, then I never saw them. Then Mickey Gall went and trained at Immortal Martial Arts with Matt Brown, and then all of a sudden he comes out and fights Jordan Williams, and he looks like Naaman Gracie against Mark Lemminger. And if you don't remember that fight, I'm going to reference that again later on in this card.
Man, it was Muay Thai.
Mackenzie Dern when she takes on Tecia Torres. But if you look at Naaman Gracie when he fights Mark Lemminger, it's like, holy crap. Like, Naaman's been a less than stellar striker in all of his MMA fights, because he's been with Bellator and World Series. And then all of a sudden against Mark Lemminger, who's a good wrestler, but a pretty good striker, Naaman's Bangkok ready. We're Jorge Gurgel. We're looking really good. So then Naaman goes out and fights Logan Storley, and Logan Storley looks like he's the boxer. Well, for Mickey Gall to relay that, he fights Jordan Williams. Jordan Williams, striker. Mickey Gall had laser striking in that fight. Like, I can't undersell it, and I won't undersell it, but I don't want to oversell it, but he did really look good. He had Jordan Williams on wobbly legs multiple times. He's able to get the fight down. He's able to submit him in that one. He looked really, really good. And then his next time out, he fights Alex Morono. And listen, straight up, Alex Morono, if you don't know him, because you should, because he's fought Anthony Pettis, and he's fought Donald Cerrone. And
knocked out Cowboy.
Knocked out Cowboy. Alex Morono has a Taekwondo base and a Jiu-Jitsu base. And he's really hard to beat because he has good volume, he has good power, he's good on the ground, very well-rounded. In that fight, Alex Morono drops Mickey Gall. He's able to really just have his way with them, not get taken down, and win a decided unanimous decision. So again, I look at it for Gall. It really is tough. He has a new podcast with Gerard Michaels, so that's cool. The GMMG podcast or MGGM podcast, that's kind of fun. But when I look at it for his opponent in this fight, Mike Malott, 2009 National Light Contact Kickboxing Champion. He was also able to get Worlds after that in 2009. No-gi champion in multiple different jiu-jitsu competitions, and you see that out of him. Muay Thai boxing and jiu-jitsu coach over at Team Alpha Male. The last Team Alpha Male coach that we had really make a run in the UFC, no, I'm not talking about Danny Castillo, who only yells when he's in the corner of every fight, but it was Alexander Munoz, and he has not looked good in UFC. I know he's a wrestling coach with Team Alpha Male. There was a little bit of hype there because he actually is a good power puncher, but he hasn't looked great in the UFC. From Malott, what I've seen, because I throw out the fights that he's had 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, good to see, but also those fights are at featherweight and lightweight, and he is a welterweight now. So again, this is where it's going to pay out. Mickey Gall wasn't really ever the biggest guy at 170, but he's kind of filled out his frame of late.
That's a very good point to bring up.
Mike Malott, size-wise, again, has filled out his frame as well. Again, it's been from featherweight to welterweight, but he really does look like a welterweight at this point.
And I'm really glad you bring up that point about Mickey Gall, because this is a horse that I fed until it died. Because Mickey Gall talked about, oh, I'm going to move down to 155. It's something I could do. You're huge for 170, or at least now you are. And even back then it was weird too. Like, that was leading into the Diego Sanchez fight. He was like, oh, maybe I could go down to 155. Then he had an awful weight cut to make 170. His cardio failed him in that fight, and he got knocked out, and he decided, hey, I'm not going to make that weight cut. It's just, with Mickey Gall, there's always an oh, by the way, no matter what it is. And I'm just not a big fan of that at this stage of his career. It reminds me a lot of, like, Chris Duarte at the start of this NBA season. People were fired up about Chris Duarte. If you're not from Indiana, you probably have no idea who he is, but he was the front runner for Rookie of the Year like 10 games into the season. That's kind of like Mickey Gall. He was the front runner. Everybody liked him to start out. But once we started to see a little bit more tape, the holes started to become more apparent, and we did start to notice some weaknesses in his game, similar to Chris Duarte. So for Gall, it's unfortunate because anytime you say anything about somebody who has any level of hype behind them, it's sort of like the Paddy Pimblett. No matter what you say, be it positive or negative, it's going to get blown out of proportion. But for Mickey Gall, I just don't think he is the striker that he showed in the Williams fight. I do think that fight was a bit of an outlier because Williams was so worried about the overall grappling of Gall. I think Gall's going to have some success with his boxing if he can get on the inside of Malott. But I could see Mike Malott having a lot of success if he's able to stay on his back foot and use a lot of his front kicks because that's one of his better techniques. He's got a great teep to the body, a great teep even up high if he decides to go to the head with it. And I think that's a technique that would be really good to at least keep Gall off of him because the thing with Gall is that he likes his boxing, he likes his jiu-jitsu. You need to get close to your opponent if you do want to employ those two areas of your game. And I think at kicking range, Gall is going to have a lot of trouble with Malott.
Malott, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, black belt in that Smatrisky fight. Smatrisky goes for a lazy takedown. Malott just pulls on that guillotine and cranks it. He's able to roll. He's able to get the win there. 39 seconds. It was quick. If we look at the odds for this fight, Mickey Gall opened a plus a 120 underdog, now at a plus 165. For Mike Malott, open to minus 140. He's minus 200 right now. Looking at Topology, the votes are a surprise to us there to you, but I'm going to say the fan favorite, Mickey Gall, over under 65%, Matt.
I'll say under.
You're going to say under. Ooh, look at that. 664 total votes, 66% Malott, 64% by decision. For the 34% that have Gall, 49% by decision, 38% by submission. Gall, it is interesting to note, we've seen him lately out of Sanford MMA. He's put together this fun partnership with Jason Jackson, and I love it. So,
fighter.
Really, really fun stuff there, but an interesting fight nonetheless. Again, Matt, when we go for the pick, who do you got here?
Well, Jason Jackson would definitely beat Mike Malott. I think that's something I can quite comfortably say.
Love to see it.
He's so good. Here's the thing. Everything says Mickey Gall should probably win this fight. You have a fighter making their debut. They haven't been all that active as of late. I think that's fair to say about Malott when we have to go, 7.5 years ago?
Yeah, two fights really quick where he's come back into it, and he's looked good in the way that he's won.
Exactly. But my big point is, especially with this fight, is how long will it take Gall to get it down to the mat? Because I know Malott has a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I don't think he's as good of a grappler as Mickey Gall. Mickey Gall was one of these guys who, he was a brown belt, but he was able to submit black belts in true jiu-jitsu competitions. So you can't always just look at their rank and determine, oh wow, this guy's a better grappler than that guy. I do think Mike Malott will have success on his back foot throughout the majority of the first half of this fight. But you had sort of brought it up. Malott does struggle when guys get on the inside of his kicking range and his punching range. He's really good at that sort of Goldilocks zone where it's not all the way on the outside, it's not all the way on the inside. It's just when he's able to dictate pace at the longer range. I think Gall's going to really struggle with that early on in the fight, but I do think that as the fight progresses, we can see Gall get closer and closer and closer. I just don't know if he's going to be able to do anything once he does get the fight close, and honestly, that's why I'm picking Mike Malott.
Mike Malott, super speedy hands, great 1-2, really good teeps down the middle. If you look at it again, I mean, he's got a brother, Jeff with the Manitoba Moose. 20 goals on the season. Jeff, let's go.
Pretty good season, right?
Out of 52 games. Yeah. I mean, if you want to make the Jets aren't having a great year. It's been sad for old Winnipeg. But Matt, when I look at this fight for Mike Malott, again, he's trying to end Mickey Gall's Randamarco streak because it's alternating wins and losses in his last 7 fights. You could say it's a Charles Rosa streak too. But I look at it for Gall, again, if he's able to box his way in and not accept the leg kicks, which is easier said than done, I think he'll have a lot of success. For Mike Malott, great at jiu-jitsu, great at technical striking. It's a really tough ask to beat a guy like Malott for Mickey Gall. I think Gall's going to do it. As an underdog, as a plus 165, I'm going to take the shot and go with Mickey Gall. But again, would I be all that surprised if Mike Malott comes in here and he's that guy that beats Mickey Gall? Not necessarily, but for Malott, I don't know who the hell you match him up with after this. I really don't.
Honestly, the same thing can be said for both. If Gall loses this fight, he's probably fighting in Bellator. It's over for Mickey Gall if he can't beat Mike Malott. It really is. Gall didn't have hype like a Hamzat or like a Shavkat Rakhmonov, where you look at them and you think, wow, they could be a future champion, they just haven't had those opportunities yet. He was more in that kind of money fight world, It was the entertainment that was really carrying him more than his skill set was early on. But in the sport of MMA, we really only care about your personality when you're at the top of the card fighting for belts. And for Mickey Gall, he hasn't been able to get enough success to where he is in the rankings, where he is getting a lot of these media opportunities that would let him fully take advantage of his personality. It's just really unfortunate that Gall's had the career that he has, because I was a really big fan early on. I really thought he was going to go on to do great things in the sport, but I do have Mike Malott this weekend.
Tougher fight to call than most. Matt going with the Canadian Mike Malott out of Burlington, Ontario. I'm going with Mickey Gall representing New Jersey. Big time fight coming up this weekend. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have. We have 2 title fights up at the top that you're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.